Hey, welcome everybody to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm really looking forward to talking with Eric Brown. I always love talking to people who I've known in my past lives of commercial real estate. Eric, you were a really seasoned guy in the urban housing development with Urbane Apartments, really built that up in a significant way. That's how we know each other. And, I always love a good story of reinvention. And when I saw that you posted online that you recently wrote a book called The Second Act Entrepreneur: One Man's Journey from Housing to Hot Sauce, and having developed over 16,000 market rate apartments and then moving into, somebody who has 100 unique hot sauce brands. I always want to know what's going on in your brain, because I think we're in a time right now where people are reinventing themselves in a post-COVID world. And they're diving into passions and things maybe they didn't think about in the past. And so, how did you go from housing to hot sauce? I love the title of your book, but what was that reinvention journey? Welcome.
Sure.
It's great.
Sure. So post 60, I started thinking about life in a different manner. I've always been a hard worker and go after things and all of that stuff, but it's not that I think things are coming to an end anytime soon, but if there's things I want to do, I better get after it. And so
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to cleanly step away from the day-to-day operations of Urbane Apartments, Urbane Management. Back in 2008, if you recall those times, it was a little rough in that portion. I was doing a lot of marketing work on the side. I've always had a lot of side hustles along the way, and I did some work for a company called Dining in the D. There was a fellow by the name of Chef Tom there. The next year, they didn't get any funding, so we ended up, long story short, we ended up starting a hot sauce company called Street Eats. We had a couple hot sauces, 313 Foodie Sauce,
good name,
and Detroit Smoke. But anyway, when I went out to Arizona about 7 years ago to do some consulting work, and the hot sauce business was just a distraction, to be honest with you. We were in about 200 stores, and we produced our own hot sauce. We had our own commercial kitchen in Hamtramck. So fast forward to 2022, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to have a hot sauce tasting room. And so I opened up a little store on the backside of my daughter's gift shop in Ohio, mid-state Ohio.
Oh, very cool.
And I reached out to one of the fellas who first started buying our hot sauce, a company called Heatness, which is in New York City. And I didn't even know if the guy would remember me. I said, hey, I'd like to get a couple 300 hot sauce brands to make a destination point, because there's a whole underground world of hot sauce junkies, right? And so that's what we're doing. And we were able to get that set up, and I've got a handful of other things that we're selling under the brand Urbane Farm.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. I think part of, little did I know when I wrote the book, by the way, I would be doing my second act entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But
talk about that for a second. I think a lot of people are thinking about their third and their second act and their third act, and sometimes while at the same time they're finishing their current act, right? And they're doing a plan B, and they're kind of doing a side business. And what are kind of one or two steps that you can give that guidance to that person who is looking to step into a side business or a full-time business where it's their passion or something that they've had this kind of push to do?
Well, I think so for me, I just got a knowing, and it was really, it was more age related.
But what was that?
We just come out of COVID.
But where did the knowing come from? I think a lot of times, it's very difficult. I see as a business coach, Eric, and just in general, it's very hard for people to make decisions. And so a lot of times people say, I had a knowing, I felt it in my gut, it's in my soul. Like, What did that feel like? And then what was the first step of execution?
Yeah, so I have been the kind of guy who came out of the gate early in the morning. I was always up by 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was in the office no later than 6 a.m. for 25, 35 years, whatever. But I sort of went through just a period of like, I didn't really want to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm like, gee whiz, this business has been good to us and our family, and it's been a fun run. And I had partners, I didn't want to disappoint them. And so I just kind of, we talked about it, and there ended up being a solution there that made a lot of sense. So we moved forward with it.
Yeah.
Um, so not to be too like metaphysical about all that, but I do believe it's something in your
Yeah.
gut, or
Yeah. Well, I love what you're talking about. You kind of followed your gut. You listened to the universe. You surrendered to, I think, in a space where most people would have said, I don't want to do this anymore, but I have to, I have to, I have to, I have to, versus trusting that something else will come your way. And I know
yeah.
for some
And
people, I just want to say this because for some people who listen, they may think, well, financially, I can't do that. And well, I would change the narrative and say, maybe financially, you can't do that right now. But, whether it's in a year or in 5 years or in 10 years, it's always good to kind of set the intention to manifest.
yeah, and it's interesting. I've always been a big believer of the law of attraction, and
Yeah.
all of those things. And there were some interesting like data points, if you look at that, on how this sort of unfolded. And to be honest with you, once I pulled the trigger, I was spiraling for a while, because I'd placed a lot of my identity on the Urbane brand.
Mm-hmm.
um you know and I don't think that's a healthy thing to do, but I believe lots of entrepreneurs do that.
Yeah.
So it took me a minute to kind of get stabilized. And I would recommend, if someone is doing something like that and you've been doing the same thing for a long time, it's okay to pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Set a little capital aside and just reflect.
Correct.
And
Reflection. I just want to touch on that because reflection is so important, and quiet time to do nothing to get to the knowing. It doesn't just like, there's signs, but you got to take those moments to just get inner peace, right? The answers are within, and nothing happens overnight, nor does it need to. I agree
well,
with you on that. Sometimes I
exactly.
believe, yeah.
And I
Like, I
happen to
believe,
have
I
a
just want to say
cat.
one thing, like for
Sure.
people who are, because I love this conversation, right? When once you surrender to the idea that you are exactly where you're supposed to be and not rush the process, everything comes to you faster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's I have a cabin up north. So I just spent, almost 4 months there.
Good
And
for
that
you.
was so bizarre for me. But one of the things that I've journaled most all of my life, and when I would look back at those, one of the things I would say is I want every day to feel like a Saturday,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily, maybe that's a pie in the sky kind of thing, because partners, one thing when I first started my business, I completely misjudged the amount of time, effort, and energy to manage your partners.
Yeah. It's a big
And I
deal.
mean that in a positive way.
I know what
No
you
one
mean.
was doing
Yeah.
anything goofy, but when you're raising capital and people give you money for things, it takes a lot of time to manage that.
Yeah.
But no one ever called me on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So I can say that this new journey, at least so far, I'm about 9 months into it. It pretty much feels like a Saturday every
All
day.
right. Good. I
Yeah,
love
it's
it.
fun.
I love it. Eric, I have loved this conversation, and it's like somebody in business, and then sometimes you just don't know this another side of them, and it was great getting to know this side of you. I loved it. We'll have to continue it on another interview. I would love to continue the talk. In the meantime, tell everybody where they can buy your book and learn about your hot sauces.
You bet. So the book is The Second Act Entrepreneur, and you can find it on Amazon.
I love it. And the hot sauces?
The hot sauces you can find at on my Facebook page, which is Urbane Farm.
I love it. Eric, it's been a pleasure getting to know this piece of you. Think community, we all have a lot more answers inside of us than we think we do. It takes quiet time. And like Eric was talking about, and I'm in full agreement, a lot of reflection. Don't rush it, but the more you do it, the faster I think things come. That's been my experience. And Eric, it sounds like it's been yours as well.
Yes,
thanks so much, everybody. Eric, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.